Welcome to the K in Clarity podcast. I'm the host, Mezue. During this episode, we're joined by Dr. Trevor van Mierlo, founder and CEO of Evolution Health. Dr. van Mierlo has been instrumental in pioneering evidence-based digital health platforms for mental health and addiction treatment within the digital health space. Over the past 25 years, he has led the development of scalable interventions that have led cognitive behavioral therapy, predictive analytics, and personalized engagement to improve outcomes in depression, anxiety, medication adherence, and substance use. His work with Evolution Health has enabled organizations worldwide to rapidly deploy custom, culturally sensitive digital solutions, breaking down barriers to access and making high-quality care available to diverse populations. Dr. van Mierlo's expertise spans behavioral science, digital therapeutics research, user engagement analytics, and scalable technology design. He has been recognized for his extensive peer-reviewed research and groundbreaking studies, frequently cited across major industry journals, and for his thought leadership in advocating more disruptive, product-led growth models for digital mental health care. His commitment to patient empowerment and closing gaps in global mental health strategy has positioned him as a trusted advisor and thought leader, influencing both clinical practice and digital health innovation. In this conversation, we discuss the evolution of digital health interventions, focusing on personalized approaches using AI and behavioral phenotyping. He emphasizes the importance of scaling global healthcare solutions, addressing the challenges in digital health, and the need for effective mental health solutions. Trevor shares his insights on engagement strategies, ethical considerations, and the significance of cultural adaptation in digital health programs. Lastly, he also highlights the potential of freemium models to enhance accessibility and engagement in healthcare. If this is your first time tuning in, here's the gist. The healthcare industry is buzzing with innovations, but there's a lot of noise and misconceptions out there. That's where we come in. Because of my experience in the healthcare ecosystem, I've gained a unique vantage point into the industry's inner workings. We're bringing you the conversations that typically happen behind boardrooms and strategy sessions, the real challenges, innovative solutions, and game-changing insights that are reshaping healthcare as we know it. On this podcast, we're bringing you face-to-face with the industry-leading healthcare founders, executives, and innovators. We're talking about the nitty-gritty of building and scaling healthcare companies, the hurdles they've overcome, and the strategies that have led to their success. More importantly, we dive into the personal challenges that come with trying to change a system as complex as U.S. healthcare. So whether you're a healthcare entrepreneur, medical professional, or just someone passionate about the future of healthcare, this podcast is your backstage pass to the minds shaping the industry. Now let's have Trevor tell us a little bit about themselves. Hello, Trevor. Welcome to the K in Clarity podcast. For the people listening, can you give a brief overview of who you are and what it is you do?
Sure. My name's Trevor van Mierlo. I'm the founder and strategic advisor for Evolution Health.Care, which is a platform that serves behavioral interventions or online courses for people who are experiencing mental health or addiction issues. It's available 24/7 a day around the world whenever you need it.
Typically over here, we like to do an icebreaker before we dive into the main questions. And so my icebreaker for you is if you had to build any type of self-guided mental health platform, regardless of geography or any type of constraints on location, what would be the exact features or the experiences that you would include in this platform and why?
Wow, that's a great question. And it's one that's very timely with all this AI stuff that's going on. So, in the past, and this is dating me again, what we do is we create an intervention based on, say, a special population or a certain disease or condition. And, we'd go through the regular, scientific process using an evidence base, and we'd construct an intervention, based on that group. Things are very different now. We're now moving into behavioral phenotyping, where we begin to create the intervention around the individual. So this is true tailoring. We've been talking about tailoring for years, decades now, but with, AI and all of this data floating around, we can now create interventions. Of course, we'd pick a topic, but we'd assemble it based on how the person engages with it. So we're living in a very unique time with a lot of, very exciting things, but also a lot of scary things. Because as we're learning about AI, we're learning about the positive side and also the negative side.
Tying into your history and hopefully not to date you, but you've been in the industry, and focusing on healthcare. And additionally, I know that you were competing with WebMD, you were around for the early .com crash. And
Right.
so what about those experiences really helped change or really make an impact in shaping who you are and the work that you do today?
Yeah. A great question. And, I find myself working with people in digital health who weren't born when I got my start. So, back in those very early days, the late 90s, we were really excited because we realized that the internet, as far as healthcare goes, had the potential to reach a lot of individuals at very low cost. So we started building out these interventions. We kind of got a little ahead of ourselves. What we're finding right now is that most of these interventions that are available, okay, they reach a small amount of people and they're quite expensive. So on top of that, what really hasn't changed at all is the type of therapy that we deliver. So our programs are mostly based in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. CBT has not changed for decades. It's the same thing. So, what's also changed is technology. Things are now, I remember browsers when they would load very, very slowly in your computer. We're at a far different stage right now with a lot of different modalities. So while those have increased and, the theory has remained the same, what we haven't been able to figure out is how to deliver these interventions to large amounts of people around the world at very, very low cost. So that's something that, we've struggled with throughout the, 3 decades working in this area. And we're hoping that with AI, we can now open that up and also with a platform-based approach.
After 25 years, right, you've now focused and had the ability to actually license your digital health intervention across populations. And so, what have you really seen in working with really diverse people and diverse populations and actually helping to scale, global healthcare?
Yeah, so we didn't come across this model by being smart. It's probably based on failure. So, we started off with a smoking cessation program directed at Canadians. And, we built that out and we ran it, and someone came and asked us for a copy. So we created a copy, modified it, gave it a new URL, and then, now we're running two. And we did the same thing time and time again. So, essentially what happened is we ended up with all of these different websites and all of these different versions, and it was very, very expensive to maintain them. In fact, the more customers we had, the busier we got, the less profit we made because we had to maintain all of these legacy systems. That's an issue with scale. We would have different programs in different languages, and we weren't reaching a lot of people. We were thinking more locally, and it became a problem because as the technology increased, we were unable to serve all of these different populations, or we were serving them with different websites. And at times we had customers who would license, our depression program, our anxiety program, our problem drinking program, and they had all different entry points. So we had to come across a platform-based approach in which we're able to integrate all of the content into one platform so we could offer all of these services to these different groups. Now, again, going back to behavioral phenotyping, what we're finding is that we're able to modify the user experience with each of those courses or each of those instances based on how people use the software, what types of behavioral prompts that they respond to best. And that's basically with one platform, how we'll be able to reach a large number of people with very diverse needs.
I believe when we spoke, you had at least 70 plus programs, correct?
Well, that's the issue that we had. We were running 70 plus different programs with different versions. So we would do research and we'd find a way to make the program more efficacious. We'd go back to the clients and we would say, hey, great news. We have a better program. Would you like the better program? They'd say yes. We'd attach a price tag to it. And they would say, no, we like the one that we have. So we were running different versions of different programs. And, we're very, very focused on the user. We're very passionate about using this technology to make people well. So it was a problem with us, offering someone a service, an intervention, a version that was not the current intervention. So we kind of had to step back and say, how can we solve this problem? How can we enable people to use the most current version without having to upgrade all of the older versions, which became cost prohibitive and it became expensive? And listen, we understand from our clients' perspective also. They want to have a piece of software that works. They want it functional and they want it up to date, and they don't want any surprises with billing. So that's why we, took that step back. We took all of our inventory of all of our different programs and quizzes and different languages and put them into one platform. So now when we do an upgrade, everybody gets upgraded. Now when we add a new language, everybody can use the new language. We can, click a button and that language appears. So moving into more of a global type mindset, we're going to be able to add multiple courses in multiple languages in a seamless platform. And when we upgrade, there's no downtime and everybody experiences the upgrade. Essentially, that also from a business makes us more profitable.
Makes a lot of sense. I think when it ties into founders, you face a lot of challenges here. What lessons can you share with other founders when it comes down to thinking about platforms and product strategy?
Yeah. So usually when someone comes up with a digital intervention, they'll pick a topic. So let's just say depression. And they will say, we're going to create a depression for a program for this group, an app for this group. And we're going to target an insurance company to pay for it. And, that's how we'll make our revenue. Well, that's really problematic because you're only looking at the service obtainable market. So I like to use, healthcare and business. They don't really work together that well, but, I live in both worlds. So, there's something called the total accessible market, and that's everyone who needs to utilize one of these programs. And it's very, very large. And then you have the service attainable market, okay, which is people who are technically connected and they can probably use these types of programs. And then there's the service obtainable market, which is that market that I was talking about. It's that very small niche market. Insured people, so people who are not insured are not included. They have, a certain technical literacy, they have a certain education level, and obviously income because you have insurance, and we're going to build the program for them. So the problem is that you really pigeonhole yourself. Digital health needs to think differently. They need to think of the total accessible market, build your intervention for that accessible market, and then through the use of, behavioral phenotypes and algorithms and machine learning, create the program around the individual who's actually using it, which may be someone who's outside of the service, attainable market. So in building that type of a solution, you now have something that's robust and can reach a large amount of people rather than an intervention that's, very singular and is not easily replicable and may not be serviced by the full amount of people who could be your customer base.
A lot of your work now has been shifted and focused on, mental health. And I know potentially there are solutions and gaps that you see in today's market. And so what about, mental health really motivates you to solve problems there and bring about better outcomes?
Yeah. So, going back to those early days when we were running early programs, I was very close to the data and I was running the programs and I saw the people who are using it. Um, and it was really exciting because we could actually see people getting better. I was a program manager. I was communicating with a lot of them daily too. And we had online communities and I saw them, people helping each other out and, individuals, sharing experiences and succeeding through the program. Again, very, very exciting. The issue is that there are so many people who do not have access to these types of programs. So what really excites me and drives me, especially in the field of mental health, is that post-COVID, stigma has decreased. We all realize that, a lot of us, the majority of us throughout our lives will have a mental health issue and we need help. And there's not enough practitioners to face, whether in person or over camera, actually treat the number of people who need help. So what really excites me is that we do have the opportunity to reach a large amount of people. It meets to the original vision, right? The issue is we have not yet come up with ways in order people can access the help that technically we have. From a technical perspective, we have the programs, we have the platforms. It's a dissemination issue. I challenge people who have an issue to go out onto the internet and actually find a program that you can get into right away. Typically what you do is you get a letter from HR. It says, we have this program. Click on this link. You click on the link, you're brought to a page that asks you for a code. In order to get the code, you have to have a doctor's appointment. The doctor has to approve it. You get the code from your insurance company. Now a month has gone by, and someone who needed help right away has not been able to access that help. So what really drives me and excites me is that we can now, through the same type of models that larger platforms like HubSpot or LinkedIn use, we can get people into the program right away, get them the basic help they need, and then expand those services later on.
Within this field, low engagement is a notorious challenge, right? And actually finding a way to bring about people to focus on what your work is and how you're solving them. And so what potential ways are you leveraging AI and phenotyping to actually create more effective and personalized strategies?
So the elephant in the room with digital behavioral health is that people log in once or twice and then they abandon the therapy. That's an issue. I peer review for, digital health journals, and I see a lot of randomized controlled trials that are submitted, and the results are the same across the board. There's a direct correlation between engagement and efficacy. So the more people use the program, the better they are. So the challenge has been getting people to engage more with the program, and we haven't been able to figure that out. Now, with all of this data and taking a look at, behavioral phenotypes, we can figure out ways based on your personality to get you to engage with the program more, get you to log in more, get you to come back, get you to visit more pages, get you to spend more time on the page. So, these types of techniques we're currently experimenting with. We actually just published our study protocol for a 6-arm randomized controlled trial in JMIR research protocols last week. And this experiment is breaking the population into 6 different arms. And we're looking at ways that different nudges and prompts and how words are used and how phrases are used, different tools that people have access to. And with thousands and thousands of users, we can now sit back, analyze that data, have the machine analyze that data and figure out which participatory patterns work with which types of individuals. And, what's really neat is it's not based on identified gender, it's not based on age, it's not based on occupation, it's not based on education, it's based on what ticks inside of you. So this is very different than generative AI. This is predictive analytics. And, the drug companies, for example, have been trying to figure out for years and years and years why there's a 50% non-adherence rate. Why do 50% of patients stop taking their drugs? They can't figure that out. And of course, pharma would love to figure that out because that would increase their revenue by 2x. But we haven't had enough data. We don't understand why some people just stop taking their therapy. And that correlates very closely to people engaging with a digital health treatment product. But now, with all of this data, we can find out what buttons to push with you in order to get you to engage, what types of information or feedback we can give you to get you to continue to engage. And, back in the day, our studies used to have a population of 30. So we'd have to try to figure stuff out based on 30 people who were very aware of participating in this trial. Now on the internet, we have an open trial. We have tens of thousands of people using our programs. There's informed consent. We let them know, of course, because privacy is very important, that we're using their data in order to figure out how to make this program more successful for them. But we have, millions of data points now. And due to processing speed, machine learning can run through all of these different data points and begin to tell us, based on patterns that people are engaging with, which type of content to serve them, how to phrase it, and with the probability of them staying with that program or engaging with it further. And what's really neat is that the more data we get, the more we learn. So we're training the algorithm consistently. And, the interventions we see today, or if you go to evolutionhealth.care today, the intervention you see today will be very, very different 6 months from now, based on the fact that we're able to fully tailor and customize these programs based on identified profiles. I get a little excited about it because finally we're going to be able to do what we thought we could do back in the late 90s. Finally, we'll be able to serve a lot of people at decreased expense.
Yeah. I think with everything that you said, right, when it comes down to, education and income not really helping understand treatment adherence, I think you outlined why certain things are really helpful and how behavioral phenotyping has really changed your mind and the impacts of it. But can you also maybe talk about other lessons that maybe other organizations or other founders and leaders can think about in this application of behavioral phenotyping?
Yeah, again, when we used to build interventions, we would build one intervention that would serve a large amount of people. That's what we thought. And it was really hard because, it was just, the intervention, it was fairly static. Even though we had um, dynamic tools or quizzes or exercises in the intervention, it was pretty flat. Now what we can do is we can present tools to people and allow them to choose which tools in which order, and we learn from that. So when you're building an intervention, don't take a PDF and digitize the PDF. Anybody can go to the library, their local library, and get a book on cognitive behavioral therapy and flip through chapter 1 to chapter 14. And you can take those exercises and you can put them on the internet. It's different. We don't want people to go from chapter 1 to chapter 12. And by the way, that's not how we use the internet. We're now accustomed to, taking the mouse and dictating where we go. So in building these interventions, allow people to start at chapter 12 if they want. Allow them to start, at chapter 3. In the past, we'd say, in order to offer someone a cognitive behavioral therapy course, we first need to teach them what cognitive behavioral therapy is. That's the standard protocol. We need to make them understand what the therapy is before they engage with the therapy. Well, not everybody thinks like that. Maybe someone wants to go to the very last session to review it, to see what they're in store for. I mean, behavior change is hard. It's a lot of work. We got to allow people to have control, mastery of their own therapy. And, so my advice to people who are building these programs, don't take the PDF or the library book and just create a standard experience that you think will fit everybody, because evidence is proving that that just does not work. And for us living for years, with devices and being in control of devices, that's not how people think. So you have to allow people the freedom and flexibility to control their own experience. That melds in very nice with the terms of like bedside manner and all those types of things. We're very, very good therapists. And they don't just come in and deliver the therapy that they learned in school. They'll sit down and they'll listen to the patient and begin to customize that course of therapy around that individual. We can now do that digitally, and people who build these programs should.
When it comes down to people and patients, and how you mentioned the leveraging of AI and behavioral phenotyping, there might be concerns when it comes down to data privacy and data security, especially in influencing, different types of behaviors for the better. But there might be concerns when it comes down to this. So maybe can you speak about that and, way people can think about it?
Yeah, for sure. It is concerning. And I'm not only a scientist, I'm a father. And I have, children who are on these devices longer than they should. I try to police it, and sometimes I do a good job, sometimes I don't. The concern is that, back to what I spoke about, through the use of identifying behavioral phenotypes, I can find out what makes you tick, which is great because I can design a course or give you course elements, phrase things in a certain way. For example, directive content, social proof content, present bias content. These are all behavioral economics terms. Find out which ones you respond to most and then build the program to you. It's great because now I can build you a better program. I find out what makes you tick, and I utilize that information to develop a great course for you. That also has a very dangerous side, very dangerous side. I know now what makes you tick, some of the drivers inside of you. Again, not based on any of those demographic or indication specific variables, how many cigarettes you smoke, how depressed you are, how many drinks you have. All that information is not the important information. The important information is how you respond. So I can take that information and potentially sell you these magic beans for $49.90 per month and get you to buy them. So that's, and again, as a father, I see other organizations doing this type of stuff through these devices to my kids. In healthcare, it's very, very scary because, we're dealing with, people's health. We're dealing with their emotions. We can manipulate them. So we really need to put up guardrails and rules and regulations that ensure that organizations are using this information and these methods for good rather than for evil. I'll give you an example. For our past study, we had a lot of data. We started working with behavioral economics. We had a 3-arm randomized controlled trial that was for a depression program. Arm 1 was business as usual. You just come and you experience kind of the PDF library book version. Arm 2 had specific types of nudges and prompts. Arm 3 had other more enhanced nudges and prompts. Well, we found out that in Arm 3, we increased engagement by 93%. I mean, it's amazing how it worked. The journal typically asks you to make your data available to other researchers. We couldn't do that because inside that data are ways in which you could figure out how to potentially go on to our platform, which is free. There's no cost to join, find members and sell them those magic beans. So it's a concern. And we're living in a time right now where, we see people addicted to TikTok. We see people, addicted to other platforms and other modalities. They like to make people quote unquote addicted. I'm using that term lightly, but they like to keep people engaged because it drives revenue, right? The more pages people view, the more banners they see, the more revenue they make. In healthcare, it's great because we can use the same techniques to get people to engage more and more with their health. But again, other people can use those same methods to get people to buy products, to get people to go to different websites, those types of things. So we do need to be very careful and proceed with caution. We are an extremely conscientious organization that is aware of this, and it's something that we're free to speak about because we want to make sure that we're the leaders in this space as far as protecting people and making them well.
The double-edged sword, right? When it comes down to this, as you mentioned, behavioral economics and tailored messaging are core to your interventions. What messaging have you really seen has inspired, great behavioral change in people? And what are some ethical considerations that you think about when you're building about these interventions, and maybe how it ties into data ownership and de-identification?
Yeah, another great question. So I'll go back in time a little bit more. So back, probably around the early 2000s, we allowed people to upload an avatar, an image that that represented them. And we're working with research hospitals and IRBs, and we had to go through the process because we're very concerned that people will upload pictures of themselves. And, they inadvertently do that and then sort of expose themselves and their issues to the community at large. So, we put the proper safeguards in place. We finally got the IRB to agree that that's a good idea. And we launched it. And all of a sudden, there were pictures of cats. Probably, 25% of our people were uploading pictures of cats. So I didn't know if this was a trend. I didn't know if these were all cat lovers. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. So, but it was successful and it was safe and people were engaging. In that last randomized controlled trial that I spoke to you about, we increased engagement primarily not by presenting exercises, but by giving people options to do things like that, upload an avatar that represents yourself. And, we were super surprised that those people who follow that type of a personalization exercise, those are the ones who dramatically increased their engagement with the course. We also found that the people who clicked on other people's goals, and we showed goals with people who had uploaded images that represented themselves, those individuals also statistically viewed that and then replicated that behavior. So, there's many, many patterns that are beginning to emerge, and we're still very, very early stage. That's why we're excited to get going with this latest 6-arm randomized controlled trial, because we're finding out those patterns. We're finding out which types of things are engaging to people and are leading them to do other things. So, that's That's the most exciting part of what we found. Now, as far as data privacy goes, people must be able to delete their data from a program if they ask for it. And it should be very easy for them to do. And it should happen in the back end, and it should happen in minutes. And that's absolutely essential. In saying that, on our platforms, we collect the least amount of personally identifiable information as possible. We don't want your name. We don't want your address. We collect very, very general demographic characteristics. Again, we use those in our algorithms, and we also use those to personalize the program. Like a lot of the tests you'll take will give you, a result that's based on other individuals of your same identified gender and age. Norm frequency, it's called in behavioral psychology, normative feedback. So we collect a minimum amount. We don't want anything. We don't want credit card numbers. We prefer not to have your email address. Email addresses are often a necessity because if you lose your password, if you need to change, your access information, we need to communicate with you somehow. Long story short, organizations should collect the least amount of personally identifiable information as possible. And we don't need to, because we have tens of thousands of people going through these programs. So statistically, we don't need that type of information in order to derive inferences from the data. So a couple things there, but the most important part is this data belongs to the individuals. If they want to delete it, they delete it. It's not yours. Collect the least amount as possible.
When tying into that, right, you're obviously delivering customized, tailored experiences. How do you think about and go about delivering more empowered solutions for patients rather as ones that they might feel manipulated by through algorithms?
Yeah, everyone is still figuring that out because they're one of the same, right? And the proper answer to that is be honest. People need to know that the program that you're experiencing is based on, data that we've leveraged from other individuals like you. Our goal is to make you healthy. This is how the process works. So, that needs to be articulated on the privacy policy. It needs to be articulated in terms of use. And, the good news is that if we're able to use this technology, we can make people better faster. Okay. The bad news, of course, and we've discussed this, is that we may be able to utilize that data to do things that are not in their best interest and maybe in the best interest of a corporation or someone else. So honesty is the best policy.
I know you're also working on assisting displaced Ukrainians.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what you're doing there and how you really think about, building, adapting, and really working on, different interventions for this population?
Yeah, so we're learning a lot. So what happened was we had a group of Ukrainian developers who were working with us on a project for depression. We're translating it into Danish. We're working with a Danish group. So we took our English version of the program and we culturally adapted it into Danish, and we had, Ukrainians working on it. Tragically, the war broke out. They were dispersed. I mean, it's an awful thing, of course. And, project was halted. And then once they started, working again, a project manager came up to me and said, "Hey, Trevor, can we build one of these for us? We really, really need this." And it's kind of an emotional thing. So I said, "Well, of course, we'll find a way to do it." They said, "We need this type of thing to help us. We've now been plucked out of our homes and we're living in a different country. There's different cultures. We can't speak the language. Finding housing is fine. Communicating with the landlord is fine. Like all of these things, it's really tough. We see what we've built in Danish. Can we build something for us in Ukrainian?" Again, so we did. And, we're able to attain some funding to build out this program, and are not just translating the text into Ukrainian. So we built a resiliency course for refugees, an English version, and we gave the course to them. They're developing it, but they're doing more than developing it. They're looking at the content and they're massaging and changing the content to make sure that it's culturally relevant, but also speaks to their experience. So, in a way, it's really tough because we're looking at the program and I'm asking them what changes they're making and why they're making changes, and they're deeply, deeply personal. So, sometimes when I'm working, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're talking about, modifying this section of the program, and I can tell by the response of the individual I'm working with that this is hitting home for them. This is not just, we're doing some work, we're coding some stuff. So, it's challenging because of the personal side. I've been told by a number of the developers that this is actually therapeutic for themselves. I mean, they're actually building something to help their fellow countrymen. Like, a lot of people feel, feelings of guilt and shame and abandonment and nostalgia. Building this is helpful because it has the potential to reach, if we promote it properly, globally, Ukrainian refugees around the world. They can access this program 24/7. It's anonymous. It's based on all those principles that we discussed, and it can help a lot of people. So, for all those reasons, it's a really interesting process we're going through, cultural adaptation. And what's really neat is that we're tracking all of this, and there are other displaced groups around the world. We're sincerely hoping that we can get in touch with people from these groups that can help us translate this resiliency program into a program that is culturally relevant for them. So, it's obviously not a very good situation, but what's exciting is the fact that we can go back to that original vision we had in the late 90s with high reach, very low cost, and be able to help a lot of people. Based on what we talked about before, with individuals focused on like the service obtainable market, this is I don't want to put it in business terms, but this is a very large market. And if we can illustrate that this approach to digital health program development can reach a lot of people around the world, not just a small group of insured people, we can be very successful in building a global scalable model of not just this course in this language, but these courses in these languages. So the future is bright. And, we should all be working to put ourselves out of a job. That's kind of what we think when we go to work every day. It would be wonderful if that happened because everybody would be healthy, but the potential is here. The question is, do we have the will to think of healthcare differently? And do we have the desire to think differently in order to help more people? That's a very tough question.
Yeah, when it ties to thinking differently, right? Digital health companies face limitations when it comes down to data sets and also slow enterprise cycles. So how's your approach really offering, a global first multi-language white label programs really help you guys build a scalable and adaptable model? And maybe what is some advice that you'd have for some other leaders out there?
Yeah. So, again, an answer that's not based out of wisdom, but based out of failure. So we used to follow the enterprise model. And here's how it works. You reach someone at, an insurance company or a government organization or a large company, and you start talking about launching a version of this program. Let's just say it works. That discussion takes about a year. After all the papers are signed and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, you now begin development. And you have to work with all of the internal teams in the bureaucracy with that organization. Ultimately, something is launched, which is usually 6 months to a year later, and it's nowhere near the original vision because of all of those constraints. And then, the real nail in the coffin is if that organization doesn't promote the program to their policyholders, to their citizens, to their students, to their users, all of that work is gone. It was a waste. And it's very expensive work. People with salaries, lawyers, accountants, all these types of things, individuals. So we did that model and we were moderately successful, but we found its limitation. Again, look at that process. And if we just do research and we're like, wait a minute, we got to insert this into that program because it's a better program. You don't want to do that because now that has to go through committees and this type of thing, and it delays it further. So as far as innovation goes, that enterprise model does not work. So what we've done is we've created a freemium model where individuals can go to the program. They can, click here for free. They can immediately start using the program immediately. They have so many clicks, and then we ask them to formally sign up. They're allowed to sign up at no cost. And then we have enhanced features like text messaging that cost us, a little bit more money, and they can purchase those types of things. So the freemium model is something that hasn't been tried in digital health. We also use that model for sales purposes. So instead of having a salesperson knock on the door or make a call, what we do is we have people go through the free process and say, wow, you know what? My organization could really use a version of this program. We would like our own. And what we can do is have them contact us. We can create a custom branded instance of that program with their logo, with their brand, with their own access to data very quickly. So instead of the sales to launch process lasting years, year and a half, 2 years, it can last a day. And as far as them promoting the program to their students, employees, citizens, we also provide them with promotional material, which they can adapt, their PR and their marketing team can adapt and get out quickly. Because again, it's, if you build it, they will come. That's not the case in digital health. I mean, you need to come up with models that engage people quicker from the client side and then also from the user side. So it's still an experiment. It's what other freemium services use. It just has not been done in healthcare, probably because of the reason I spoke earlier. And going back to what advice would I give to people who are doing startups, don't think of the service obtainable market. Think of the total accessible market. And then figure out ways, once you're able to get people from that total accessible market utilizing your intervention, that's where you can get in there and start to customize things and build experiences for governments, EAPs, insurance companies, nonprofits. And our hypothesis is that this is the quicker way to profitability and also helping more people.
Perfect. Before going on to the lightning round,
Okay.
my last question for you is, why do you think there is not a widely acknowledged or used, platform for behavioral health? If we had to compare platforms, you could, look at something like LinkedIn or HubSpot. And why do you think the industry hasn't created anything like this? And what do you think is actually necessary to at least have the level of adoption and impact if one was to actually be built?
Right. So we actually built one, Evolution Health.Care. People can go there. We have programs in Canadian English, Canadian French, American English. The English languages are different from a programmatic perspective. We have courses in Danish. We have, some in Swedish. We're launching some in Ukrainian. We have a couple of courses in Croatian. So, and we plan on building more courses and, of course, culturally adapting all of those courses to different languages. So that happened because of the business problem I spoke about earlier, having 70 different websites, all in different languages, all different versions. So, by mistake, we ended up realizing that we had to create a platform. So, and our realization of that is just based on that experience I discussed, getting more clients and becoming less profitable with more clients. So why haven't people come up with this model, or why haven't we done it in digital health? Well, it goes back to people usually creating a single program, let's say a program for post-traumatic stress disorder for veterans. And, so they create that one program, and it's just the way that we think. You get a grant. You don't get a grant if it's based on a grant for a large program encompassing all different behavioral issues. You get a grant to help one specific population. So that program runs, that grant runs out, it goes away. Someone else gets a grant, they learn from the publications if the previous group, published data, and you build it. And then that grant goes away. And it's the same type of thing across conditions, across languages, and across cultures. In the model, the funding model is based on that. One funding round for one indication for one specific group. So what we've done is we're forced to do is step outside the box, okay, and take a look at that failure, saying, how can we create a platform that's going to avoid that problem? And that's what we built. I love your question about what advice to give to people starting up digital health ventures. Think of the larger market. Don't pigeonhole yourself. There's a large amount of people out there with comorbidities. People who say are depressed may have a weight problem. It often goes hand in hand. People who are quitting smoking often gain a lot of weight. So instead of, creating one specific intervention for one targeted group, create interventions that can cast a very, very wide.
Perfect. Now it is time for the lightning round. And so my first question for you is, what is something that surprised you in terms of your career when it comes around user engagement?
Okay. Sure. A well-timed single nudge delivered to a specific individual can increase engagement 80, 90%. That's all it takes. You need to find out what that nudge is, but that one nudge may dramatically increase their use of that intervention and ultimately their overall health.
My second question for you is, what's the biggest barrier when it comes to scaling digital health mental platforms worldwide?
The lack of multilingual open access solutions that you can sign up with and get into the program right away. So no waiting list, no note from your doctor, no code from the insurance company. If we're able to leverage the freemium model and get people engaged right away, we will dramatically see an increase in digital health usage, and the non-adherence problem will also start to disappear.
And then lastly, my question for you is, if you had to change the mindset around behavioral health technology, what would that mindset actually be?
Stop designing for the insured. Stop designing for the insured. Because when we design for the insured, we're ignoring that whole total accessible market. By paying attention to the total accessible market, you can serve a lot of different people other than those who just happen to have a good job and good insurance.
I'm going to add one more as a bonus, but how does this as well tie into adherence? What can be solved to actually make sure that people are adhering to their treatment plans, their medications, in terms of, scaling this worldwide as well?
Yeah. So years ago, I did a study for a pharmaceutical company, and they wanted to figure out why people were not taking their drugs, why people were stopping. And it was for a pretty expensive drug also. And so we went into the literature and we did a deep dive. All the different trials of people who were taking this medication. And the nice thing about scientific studies is you have something called background, and then you have a discussion. And the discussion area is kind of where the researchers can let loose a little bit, right? So we went through the discussion and we used grounded theory to code different reasons why the researchers thought people stopped taking the drug. And we were amazed with the results. People stop taking the drug because they're feeling better. So you're sitting back, you're going, okay, well, people are taking this drug, they're feeling better. Why are they no longer taking it? Our minds are very complex. People may think, oh, I never had this, I'm better, I don't need this anymore, that type of thing. The other major factor was that people did not understand what the drug was doing. They just had no idea. So when you don't really understand what you're engaging with, and it may have a lot of side effects, that type of thing, you're not really interested perhaps in continuing. Another thing was side effects. They weren't presented the opportunities to do a cost benefit analysis. So, I'm feeling better, but these side effects are really bad for a couple of days. So I'd rather not have the side effects and then hopefully maintain where I am, which usually isn't the case. Usually if you abandon the drug, you have to go and be recalibrated, the disease progressed, that type of thing. So, these are the factors of non-adherence that we can now begin to figure out. Previously, we couldn't figure out because we didn't have the behavioral phenotypes. Now we can begin how to adjust those things that people may be thinking in order to have them stay with their therapy, stay more adherent.
Okay. Well, Trevor, thank you for your time. With everything that we spoke about when it comes down to, behavioral phenotyping, behavioral changes, data ownership, and privacy, what are some final thoughts that you have?
I think we're entering like a very exciting time. As far as those of us who are very interested in leveraging digital technology to increase wellness on a global scale, it's here, it's right in front of us. We have to be brave. We have to start thinking of the whole world, and how we can bring these digital interventions to the masses. It just takes a little bit of thinking in a different way and, a big desire to use technology for good rather than for evil.
Well, Trevor, thank you for your time again. Where can people choose to connect with you if they choose to do so?
Yeah, please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, and you can reach me through the platform evolutionhealth.care, which is open 24/7. It's anonymous. If you need help in the areas that we cover right now, just jump right in and you can start engaging with the different courses. Otherwise, get in touch with me and I'll be happy to reach out back to you.
Well, Trevor, thank you for your time on the K in Clarity podcast.
Thank you.